Hello, my punks and my skins. The Q&A segments will now resume. And in recommencing them, we must first address that question which is foremost on your minds. Why was the Q&A segment ever suspended in the first place? The answer to this question, I regret to say, is more in the nature of a confession. The Q&A segments, but moreover, station KFUX was founded upon the principle that punks is truth. And to that end, we have always endeavored to present to you the unvarnished, undiluted, verifiable, factual, established truth to the best of our ability. We have never showcased lies or insincerity or dishonesty of any kind. Yet, at one point, at the end of last year, when we suspended the Q&A segments, I regret to confess that by way of omission, we misled you, intentionally, deliberately. I did not tell you the primary reason why we elected to suspend the Q&A segments indefinitely. The reasons which I gave you were absolutely honest. They were completely legitimate. But as I say, by way of omission, we did not divulge the primary reason, which is that along about the midpoint of last year, we began to receive a number of questions regarding one of your mid-generation punk rock cousins. This is a kid who was once fairly popular. He was even celebrated in certain quarters, up until the point that he was caught up in a scandal, a controversy of sorts, and all kinds of allegations and accusations were being leveled at him. And it was grist for Rose City rumor mills, and all of the gossips, and all of the liars, and all of the drama queens, and all of those of you who love to mangle the facts, take the truth and twist it in order to represent whatever it is that you want it to be. He had a field day, went on the warpath, destroyed this kid's reputation, compelled him to sever ties, burn bridges, go underground, disappear. Off the grid, under the radar, living out in the sidelines, quietly detached. And that's where he is to this day. He just vanished. I knew that if I answered these questions, which initially were quite innocuous, that it would draw attention to this kid. And I thought it best not to do that. But you see, later, the questions began to comprise that controversy, that scandal. And I knew that if I addressed those questions, it would drag him right back under the spotlight. You see, I told him at the time when it all went down, you need to deal with this here and now, today, immediately. You need to confront all of these accusers. You need to stare down all of these allegations. You need to stand up for yourself. And if you are in fact innocent, you need to clear your name. You got nothing to lose and everything to gain. You got to step up to all of this and shut them down here and now. Don't just run away from all of this. But you see, that's exactly what he chose to do. Ran away from all of it, thinking somehow that it would all just sort of evaporate and go away. And as you and I, and now he knows, that's not how it happens. Not only does that sort of thing not just vanish, it compounds, it gets worse the longer it is ignored. And so, in the moment, the first time that it happened, I made a split-second, but non-arbitrary decision. You know, a typical Q&A segment, I'm answering a couple of questions, and then we would get to a question about this kid, and I halted the segment. I literally stopped the camera. I then took the question and the other questions in proximity, even though they had nothing to do with this kid, they just happened to be in the same batch. I took all of these questions and we just filed them away. Then I got a fresh batch of questions, dumped them out, and I answered those. And we just recommenced and we took it from there. Do you understand what I'm telling you? We avoided the questions about this kid by evading the questions about this kid in a way that we could preserve the spontaneity, the extemporaneous answers that I'm supposed to be giving you with new, fresh questions, and in a way which allowed us to continue with the segments altogether. Now, obviously, that kind of maneuver is not something you can do continuously. You can't just keep doing that, and I knew this. And then, of course, we began to get questions about the questions. Hey, you, what happened to the question I asked about so-and-so? How come you didn't answer my question about so-and-so? Why don't you ever talk about so-and-so? And I realized that we needed to form some kind of a compromise. And I decided that the next time that we got a fairly harmless question about this kid, I would just go ahead and answer it. And we did. We got one which was nice and even-handed. And I said, well, you know what, if you want to know the answer to this, here's an idea. Why don't you just go track this kid down and ask him yourself? What better way to get a direct response, you know? Ask him directly. And if you can't find him, or if you find him but he refuses to answer the question, well then bring it back to me and ask me again someday, and we'll just take it from there. Nicely, open-endedly handled. Or so I thought. It bought us about 5 minutes. It just triggered a whole bunch of new questions, more questions, a whole avalanche of other questions about this kid. And we reached an impasse. I realized I only had one of 3 options. We could just go on evading and avoiding the questions. Well, as I said, you can't sustain that indefinitely. That's not going to work. That's not an answer. The second option, just say the hell with it and answer the questions. Just start answering them. Well, if we did that, to use one of his own expressions, we would literally be throwing him under the bus. This is one of my boys. This is one of my godsons. Why would I do that to him? Why would I destroy all of the quiet and solitude that he's managed to attain for himself? Why would I do that? So that brings us to the third option. All right. If you cannot or you will not answer any questions about this kid, the only way that you can justify not answering questions about this kid in a format wherein they send the questions and you're supposed to answer them, the only way that you can justify not answering questions about this kid is if you stop answering everybody's question about everything. Don't answer any more questions from anybody. Pull the plug. Suspend the segment altogether. And that's what we did, and that's why we did it. And here we are. Now, as I've said, in the interim, all of those allegations, all those accusations, all of that old dirty business, which has been resurfacing, reemerging, it didn't just go away. But the problem is, newer details, new evidence of a sort, new variables are emerging, resurfacing. I say resurfacing because apparently they might have been there all along. I just never saw them. I didn't perceive them at the time. But it all amounts to one thing. I needed to get a message through to this kid to let him know, look, something needs to be done about this. This needs to be addressed. But you remember the aforementioned burning of bridges? Even I don't have direct communication with this kid anymore. I had to send it piecemeal through the grapevine. Eventually it got to him, and eventually we got a response. Indirectly, but we got a response. The response, in addition to being outrightly dismissive, was scornful and latently hostile and indifferent, but above all, it was completely devoid of any appreciation for anybody, including myself and a handful of others, who have been defending this kid all along. We've been defending him for years. No appreciation, no gratitude whatsoever for all the efforts exerted in his behalf. The gist of his response was, he doesn't care. He doesn't care what anybody says about him. He doesn't care what anybody thinks about him. He doesn't care about his reputation. He doesn't care about the rumors. He doesn't care about the gossip. He doesn't care about answering to any of these allegations or accusations. He doesn't care about his past. He apparently doesn't care about the safety of his present, and he certainly doesn't care about his future. He made this perfectly clear. This is his attitude. And as such, given that this is his attitude, but more to the point, because he refuses to undertake any kind of accountability, not only to myself, but to all of us who trusted him in the first place, who trusted him, trusted in him, and trusted that we could rightfully defend him, because there's no accountability to any of us. Well, he's made his position quite clear. So, what is the expression some of you kids use when somebody is green lighted? When they are green lit? In lieu of these new details, these new variables, this new sort of evidence that's surfacing or in fact resurfacing, I know that I can no longer go on defending him. The question is, if I should have been defending him in the first place. And the bottom line remains the same. When I told this kid in the message I got to him, your past is catching up with you and it is going to bite you in the ass if you do not pull your head out of your punk ass and come and talk to me. Come and address these issues. Answer these questions. Man up and own up to some of this stuff. Because I can't do it on my own. I can't do it anymore. Not anymore. But he's made his position perfectly clear, and his attitude cannot be mistaken. Therefore, I hereby declare open season on any and all questions that any of you might care to send to me, including any questions about that one cousin of yours. With that imparted, we shall now recommence the Q&A segments. Oh, a couple of quick points. These were initially supposed to be informal. Now they're going to be even more informal than they were in the first place. I don't even know if all the questions are going to be answered here in this office any longer. They're probably going to be answered elsewhere. They might have to be, which should be fine. Second point, instead of 5 or 6 questions at a time, I think we're going to answer 1 or 2 per segment. That way we can achieve that brevity and that concision which we were originally striving to attain. The one which is no doubt most appealing to your limited attention spans. Now, to our first question. What is your impression of this picture? Who sent this in here? Yeesh. Well, all right. Obviously, I don't remember the name. I don't remember which one it is, but clearly this is one of the. This is a garbage pail kid, isn't it?